Welcome to This Blooming City, brought to you by the White Plains Beautification Foundation. Volunteers helping to make White Plains a beautiful city. And I have as my guests today two people from the John Jay Landscape Development Firm. And first we have Jay Archer, who has been a guest here before and will be a guest here again and again and again.
Thank you.
Jay, it's nice to have you back.
Nice to be back.
And your associate, who is named Bill Meyer, who is the head designer of John Jay Landscape Development. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Before the cameras started to roll, you were saying that you were at New York Botanical Garden, which you guys call NYBG.
Exactly.
Those of you in the know. Yeah.
Yes, Jay was teaching there last night, and I made a presentation on some of our most recent work involving landscapes, rain gardens, and pond restoration.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting stuff.
Okay. So you spend a lot of time down at the NYBG, hmm?
Yes, so it seems.
You teach the classes there?
Yes, it's my home away from home. And I grew up in the Bronx, so it's always nice to go back.
You know how to get there.
I know how to get there intimately.
Yeah.
And it's been very rewarding.
It's a wonderful place.
Yes, and our newest involvement is there's a curriculum now, environmental gardening. And so the course we were teaching last night with Bill's help is waterscapes. Mm-hmm. And it's all about water in the landscape environment, particularly with an ecological bent on how we can improve water quality and put our resources to better use and conserve our precious natural resource. And in the many varied ways we can engage as human beings to have fun and participate in creating art and at the same time being ecologically responsible.
Speaking of art, you too are an artist, aren't you, Bill?
I do ecological art.
Ecological art.
Yes.
Did you study that at NYBG?
I did study at NYBG, became certified in landscape design. Prior to that, I had taken a degree in fine art, sculpture, and art history.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what I do is I combine sculpture and landscape, creating different types of installations that are conceptually based, juxtapositioning the growing plants with architectural features, so kind of blurring that line between architecture and landscape.
Do you have anything to do with the ads that you produce? Well, you didn't do this one. This is a photograph. Can the camera pick that up, Rita? This is a water garden. Are we going to talk about water gardens this show or the next show?
Oh, the next show.
Next show. Okay, we won't talk about water gardens, but this is Jay's water garden.
Well, we love talking about water gardens.
I tore this out of a magazine before I even knew who you were, for goodness sake, because I thought it was
marketing and advertising works.
I save everything.
Yeah, we all put our 2 cents into the ads there.
But you illustrate. What do you do? Pen and ink with watercolor, or?
Well, with the landscape design plans, I'm using mostly computer drafting right now, and then I take pencil, color the pencil, so you get the nice crisp lines of the computer drafting plan, and then you can do kind of blur it out with color. This
would be for a really big job, wouldn't it? You're not going to You're not going to do this for my backyard.
We're not snobs.
No. I could throw together a quick sketch based on a small photograph of an area that would like to be developed, kind of enhance the appearance.
That's so good because it's so hard to imagine sometimes. You clip things out of magazines, get ideas of what you want to do, but to actually, most of us have made so many mistakes in our gardens. Maybe overplanted, and a lot of people I know plant things that are going to get too large in their front yards, whether it's a cut leaf Japanese maple, because they look a certain way when they're young, and then they turn into big trees.
Yeah, you have to be careful with the maples because some will grow to be 3 to 5 feet, and some will grow to be 35 feet.
Depending on the light and the sun and other...
On the cultivar of the Japanese maple.
Yeah.
Well, we call those mistakes job security in our industry. So it gives us something to do and a raison d'etre for existence.
Yes, a reason for being, yes.
Also, we're working with living things. So as human beings, all of us make mistakes. So whoops and move on. And we're not playing with furniture. So this is not growing and changing. The wonderful thing about horticulture and plants is that they do change. They change through the seasons. They change through their life cycle. You know, they flower, they seed, change color, go dormant. It's really quite exciting to watch nature unfold. That's what horticulture is all about.
I think to be able to plant for the different seasons is important, and that's what I would like to do in our back garden, which is a very natural setting. You've seen it, Jay. But I like in the wintertime to have kind of the architecture of the structure of plants where you see them without their leaves.
Yes, and planting through the seasons gives you a very good, interesting connection to the landscape, to the ecology of the landscape.
Yeah.
Because you understand what's growing and what's flowering and what different periods.
Yeah.
And you're really starting to play with ecology when you can start to focus on...
particularly, once again, when it comes back around to native plants, the succession of what those plants do, for the biology of our landscape environment. So the birds they attract, as we were talking about, Virginia creepers, very important. People interpret it as a weed. Its beautiful color in the fall attracts migratory birds. That's a very important source of food before they travel south. And they also remember where that plant is. And, succeeded by other seed plants. And, throughout the year, there's always something going to flower, going to seed. And that's food for our insects and our birds. And bats and snakes and frogs and all the things that terrify people in nature because we're so out of touch with our own selves.
Do you want to repeat that story about the golf course and
about the golf course
and the jewel weed and describe jewel weed because a lot of people don't know what that is.
Jewel weed is often seen in roadsides and wet places. It's indicative of basically a wetland, and it's got the little drooping yellow bellflowers, and it's a native impatient. Most people don't know, and it attracts hummingbirds. Now, who doesn't like hummingbirds? I know lots of people don't like frogs and snakes and all kinds of bugs, but who doesn't like a hummingbird? That's hard not to like. And they're so beautiful to watch, and they're only here for a short period. We have only one species, the rufous-sided hummingbird, in the East Coast and the Northeast. You go to New Mexico, they have 18 species, and they're everywhere, and they nest and exist year long. That's a kind of spoiled attachment you can have in the Southwest. In the Northeast, we have great climate because we're not prone to hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides like California, extended drought for years on end. We have a very relatively nice climate, except excessive rain occasionally. But we're not living in Georgia where they have 20 inches of rain right now. And, periodically you have all these disasters. Some are acts of God and some a result of man-made catastrophe because we have changed the land. Katrina is a great example, and so many of the flooding that's been caused over time. It's a result of the way we have misused the land and developed it without giving thought to what nature possibly intends. So, and what I always say is the reason why Mother Nature is Mother Nature, not Father Nature, is because she can never be wrong.
True.
We got to keep that in mind.
We know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to this jewel weed, we took a Sunday drive recently, and we're driving through Purchase and went off the main drag and to the estate area, and here was a lovely setting. They had a wall, and there was a lot of growth behind the wall, and you could see way back in the distance was a lovely home. They had jewel weed that they let alone, and it was just going throughout, behind the wall. It was just absolutely a perfect setting for it, and so unusual because often in the estate areas you see everything so highly manicured and everything so perfect, but this was very...
That's an interesting contrast where you have an architectural element, the stone wall, and then an organic element which is relatively robust, the jewel weed. and the combination, you get that juxtaposition between that hard edge and that kind of fluffy balloon-like structure.
Well, I
Really
think
interesting.
we're making great progress in the area of people gaining an appreciation for our native plants and wildflowers.
Well, look at Westchester Community College and their
Well,
native plant
absolutely,
center.
the
Who ever
Native
heard
Plant
of this
Center.
before?
Right,
Yeah.
we can't sing the praises not only of native plants, but particularly the Native Plant Center and what's going on there. I'm always glad to be a part of that educational process.
You give courses there. You teach classes there.
We're
don't you?
involved in there. Also, we see an emergence of interest in the incorporation of native plants and their beauty. Great, for instance, my own home, we now have trained our people not to pull the goldenrod out of the hollies. Because the goldenrod growing through the holly is a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful.
Plus, it's very important, ecologically valuable food to attract beneficial insects. The same thing is true of the native wood aster. It looks like a weed most of the year, but in the fall, when it proliferates in bloom, it's just the most beautiful ground cover, particularly against even your ornamental plants and your rhododendron and everything else. So native plants wonderfully get along and complement our existing hybrid European culture.
And in many cases, that white wood aster is the only thing blooming at that time of year. So there's really
Right.
nothing else around. So you kind of want to nurture it through the rest of the year.
I don't know that tree. Whitewood aster?
Yes. Again, it looks there are several varieties, but there's a tall one, white, yellow center, some dark stems.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yeah,
and it's a great native plant,
Right.
and it will be a very useful ground cover, and once again, very important to the wildlife. Remember, I was thinking of the Lion King and the Circle of Life. I can't help it. And the animals, plus the insects, plus the birds, this all goes together. You really don't. You displace one without the other. Here's the best example. Black willow. You can't have least flycatcher without black willow.
Tell people what a least flycatcher is.
It's a bird. It's a small bird. It's the least flycatcher. And it's very important biologically because it keeps what could be a nuisance pest under control. The same thing is true of the bats. People have this irrational fear of nature, and it's evidenced in the bats.
They're going to land in our hair.
They're not going to to you. They
don't
have
get
no
too
interest
close.
in you.
Yeah. You're very large, and
Yeah,
it's
and
looking
you're
for small
scary. You know,
insects,
trust me,
yes.
Beth. You're pretty scary. So the bats are terrified of you.
Yeah.
We do not see ourselves from the flora and fauna's point of view, because once again we are disconnected from them. Instead, we're living in this artificially, sterilely created environment, in this warm cocoon, if you would, looking through a glass. We go to zoos and look at animals. We look at flowers in books, or we look at plastic flowers now, or we buy floral bouquets that'll last for 2 days. We're missing a lot of the big picture that's right outside the door. And it's all there. Westchester is so rich in not just biology and landscape, but beauty. The beauty that we miss. What did Thomas Carlyle, the great naturalist, say? The real tragedy in life is not what men suffer, but what we miss. And it's so true. Mm-hmm. Because we're such in a rush in our busy lives that our powers of observation are dulled. So if we could only spend 5 minutes a day to take a breath and observe the flight of a bumblebee and appreciate that that's in danger too. And instead of being afraid of being stung by the bee, which you're unlikely to be stung by, you're more likely to be stung by the wasp that's over here at your ankle instead of the bee that's pollinating the flowers.
Right.
We would gain a better understanding of our place in the environment. And landscape is a great way to do that because everybody can appreciate the aesthetic value of landscaping. But we like to emphasize the ecological value because it brings health to us as human beings. We need clean air and clean water to live. In order for that, we need healthy plants to help purify the water. We need healthy environments. So as long as we're playing construct nature and reconstruct nature, let's reconstruct it as a model for healthy living.
Are most of your clients of the same thinking as you?
No, they're mostly completely unaware of what we do.
We make those connections between the greater ecology of the landscape and the personal garden.
And this is a jewel weed. And this is Virginia creeper. You do want some of this in your garden, right?
Well, sometimes you're really showing these things to people for the first time. They just kind of, it's in the background, and they don't really see it until you pull it out.
Do you also do maintenance of gardens?
Oh, yeah.
You do, yeah. So that you're in
charge. Large
charge,
part of what we do.
And your people know the difference between Virginia creeper and some of these other things. But we had also been talking about poison ivy, which is not my favorite plant. It's very beautiful in the fall. I've just had too many itches from poison ivy throughout mostly in my childhood. But it is a native plant and serves a purpose.
I'm blessed that I don't get poison ivy today. No, so I can't share everybody's distress with that plant. But my suggestion regarding poison ivy is, first of all, once again, try not to fear things that are not going to harm you unless you come in contact with them. There's a lot of poison ivy in the back 40 of many people's properties. Often we're asked to go get it and eradicate it. Well, if you're never going over there and touching it, can you leave it for the birds?
Yeah.
Because it's a very valuable food source, once again, for migrating birds.
Right.
There's very few things that are that high in fat content and protein in the fall for these migrating birds. And since we are in a humongous, right here in White Plains, flyway, it's critical that we leave as much food for these migrating birds, because we do want them to come back, because our lives would be poor.
You made a point before, and I didn't realize the importance of Virginia creeper, but we have been fortunate enough to have seen a lot of migrating birds at our house. And this is just a suburban house here in White Plains, and we do have woods behind us, which helps get some of the woodland birds. But the migrating birds, some unusual ones like the Blackburnian warbler and the black and white warbler and some others. I was out there one day because they were coming left and right. I had my bird book out there, and I'm going pages, to find out which bird they were, because I'd never seen them before. They were on the Virginia creeper.
Yes, they like the Virginia creeper.
The perfect setting. There also was in the springtime, there was a rising of little insects, and they were going for them. But the same spot, by the Virginia creeper, which is over by a wall. You talk about poison ivy, perfect place for it, where it's not going to bother you unless you're hopping over your stone wall, is the stone wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is the fear? And I can understand, particularly if you're very susceptible to the rash, but put things in context, in a greater context. One of the things that we're engaged in continually with Westchester County, and we have tremendous respect for the Westchester County and Westchester County government, because we think that what they're doing is tremendously proactive for the environment, and we're working with them whenever possible to reduce invasive species and create a better environment. And one of the reasons we do that is because our people are trained to identify native plants as opposed to invasive species, as opposed to other things. So we need to select, the biological term is select, for beneficial species. So we're actively engaged in this all the time, particularly in school yards. And this is why we're so interested in rain garden development, because it's a great demonstration of how nature meets our constructed environments. And one of the reasons why we want to introduce and reintroduce native plants and landscaping into the schoolyard and eradicate pesticides. Did I say eradicate pesticides?
Yes, very loudly.
I meant it, okay? We can eradicate pesticides by redesigning our schoolyards for healthy living for our children, because they are challenged by all kinds of immunodeficiencies, including asthma,
Right.
later on Alzheimer's, and what's the other one?
The ADD thing?
No, I already have that.
Oh,
No.
autism.
Autism.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are environmentally induced
Yeah.
by negative impacts, negative human impacts that are not beyond our control. Mm-hmm. So by reducing and eliminating toxins from our environment, and by placing plants along roadsides instead of lawns, in some cases, there's nothing wrong with a lawn per se, but we can absorb more carbon dioxide from air pollution and clean the air with that. More trees. We're blessed that we have as much forest as we have here in Westchester, but we need to plant more trees because they sequester carbon and release oxygen. We need to breathe. We don't need more big open spaces that can be filled with more fertilizer and pesticides. We need more trees to breathe, more plantings, more fun. So that's
And
what we
more
intend
trees
to do.
and more rain gardens and other gardens that you put in, more plants that are native to our area. The less lawn you'll actually have, and you'll begin to realize where you'll want to use your lawn, and then where perhaps you're not using the lawn, and you would like to put in more forest kind of plants. The trees you mentioned, trees are great carbon sinks. They're also great for cooling your home. We have trees all around our home, and we have no air conditioning. We need no air conditioning.
Really?
Because our house is shaded at every part of the day because
Yeah.
of the large shade trees around our home. And that's
It
a great
makes
way
a
to
big
reduce
difference,
your electric bill.
Here's a very simple
Yeah.
exercise in design, how we can be progressive in terms of ecologically responsible design development. You can protect your house from the cold winter winds if you're putting evergreens to protect from the north wind, say behind your house, if your house is facing south, optimally. In front of the house, it's nice to have large deciduous trees, which give you shade and cooling in the summer, but then lose their leaves and let the light
Exactly.
Let
in the
sun
winter.
in. Yes.
It's a
the house.
common sense approach
Yes.
Will warm up
to
with the
designing
sun.
for sustainable landscape living.
Yeah.
And that's just a common sense approach. If you identify each problem or issue we have with our home landscapes, our suburban landscapes, our schoolscapes, and our municipal areas, we can easily assess and observe that there are sore points or areas that make you uncomfortable or unattractive or serve no purpose or no function. We need to organize our landscape design attitude towards what is going to serve the best function, give us the best return, economically, socially, culturally, environmentally. All of those things conspire together to give us a better life.
You mentioned invasive plants, vines, I assume you're talking about. They're non-native, or some of the invasive plants we're talking about native?
Well, it's a sticky wicket, it is, because I am not on a crusade
debate, yeah.
to eradicate what we call, invasive plants. For instance, where I live, around the corner from my house, is 1,000 acres of mountain laurel, state flower of Connecticut. It's a monoculture. You might consider it invasive. It's on particularly acid granitic rock. This is what it likes to live on. This is what granitic rock produces.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful landscape. That, to me, is what it should be. In areas, sometimes winged euonymus takes over. It's preferable to barberry, to me, and it's functional. However, the Sawmill Parkway is a great example.
That's what I'm thinking
So
of.
the vines are now turning what used to be a beautiful marginal woodland landscape full of rich, animal, bird, and insect life into a savanna.
Yeah.
So you might as well be living in the plains of Africa in the next 5 years, because we've done nothing to reverse the trend. And then the micro cells came and the mini hurricanes, and they took out all the trees because they were weakened by the invasive vines that had completely covered them. So these are the things to identify that are changing our environment. And the vines probably, I'm not a scientist, but if it's not obvious, it's plausible that the vines love the carbon monoxide that's given off by the cars. The trees don't care for it as much. So what is succeeding? What is the succession of life? The vines are succeeding in taking over. So that's identifiable as an invasive plant issue.
And then you lose your biodiversity by having one monocrop, one monoculture. You have one type of plant. It may have some value in some areas, but then you lose the large trees, which have nesting habitat, and you lose the ground covers.
We're going to be doing a show on that because we have actually volunteers on our own board who are involved in the vine cutting in all areas. I want to thank you both for coming on board.
You're welcome.
Blooming City. You are wonderful guests, and you're doing great work.
Great.
So thank you so much. The time has flown by again, and we'll see you again very, very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bill Meyer, the head designer of landscape development at John Jay, and my friend over here, Jay Archer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for tuning in to this Blooming City, and please join us again next time for the White Plains Beautification Foundation. I'm Beth Wallach. Good night.